How are people doing? I don't think there's anybody waiting because it's not showing up in a regular way. But I figured, I'll tell you what, we'll get into this in a couple of minutes. I just want to see if people are actually receiving the. Yeah, there I am. I'm live. I'm going to start sharing the link out, just on social media and such, and then I'll acknowledge you, chat. I apologize if there's anyone typing and no one can see it, but we'll get into it in a second because, as you guys know, I've had some delays with content. Yeah, there we go. We've got one person who's commented here. Right, yeah. Yeah, there's been some delays with content, and I don't have my good mic on me right now because I forgot it in a little bit of a rush. So I figured I can't really make content, but I can do like a short sort of live stream answering questions and explaining the whole situation, because a lot of people put money down for Renaissance Man. I think it's like 71 people now. Let me check very quickly. It's like 70, 71. Yeah, 69, it's around there, right? And I want to just explain how people are. So while we're waiting for people to show up, how's everyone doing exactly? Good days, bad days? Everything going well? There we go. There's a little bit of delay on the there's a little bit of delay on the StreamYard chat. So I don't know how good I sound, but there is a little bit of delay on the the comments because there's a whole API that's doing things. Rush from where? Oh, well, that's the reason why I haven't been able to make content. Yeah, because I am out of a house, and it's a rather interesting story, actually, I think. So I'll tell you what, we'll do 10 minutes of asking and answering questions while we get people in here, and then I'll explain the story because it's a juicy one and it pertains to the kind of things that I talk about on this channel. In short, for those who are here, a woman drama, a lot of it. So we'll answer a couple of questions beforehand. I'll answer the ones under the most recent post first, and when I've answered them, I will explain the story. Let's see what people think. Yeah, story time. Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, someone told me the other day that my channel is being throttled because of what I'm saying, apparently, I suppose, as if prayer and fasting is that threatening. So I'd really appreciate if everyone here could share the stream and share the videos with their friends, because obviously this information seems to be helping people. So I suppose if you think that it can help other people, I'd really appreciate you sharing it. But let's start with these questions here. So Every Man Thinks asks, would you suggest young men to chase adventure rather than women? Yes, because women chase men who chase adventure, basically. Experiencing the world, traveling, forging brotherhood, getting active in the church, develop as a leader, finding mentors, and building up a solid foundation for a future career to support a large family. Given that if you want to have a wife at home taking care of the kids on a two household member, I presume that's a typo, income economy, you would need to be making bank. Yes, you would need to be making bank. That's why you need the virtue. Or is it equally as prudent to find a good wife and then slowly establish yourself in a career and grow together as the journey unfolds? Well, ideally, what you'd do is you'd find the wife and then just do the adventure anyway. Now, however, that might not be the most easy thing to achieve. But what I would say is that you are going to, in the West, need a heck of a lot of virtue to be able to earn the money required to, support a wife at home looking after children. So it's necessary to have a level of self-development and autonomy such that you can do that without falling into that trap. Because as we all know, the last thing we want is a situation where both work, because there's less ability to raise children and stuff like that, less ability to maintain household, and also you get less time together because you're all working on home projects. And ultimately, what a lot of men just want is love. So there's that. I'm going to quickly check the chat here. Oh, crikey, it's bursted a little bit. Attack of Hand Beasts. I suppose someone's heard part of the story. I'm fine as can be. Only purity and sanctity of the church, water of the Jordan could ever make me feel any better. That's really good to hear, Soro Sapien. Didn't get the notification for this. Yeah, share the link out. Also, super chats. If if you're generous enough to give them to me, I'll try and give them a priority when it comes to answering the questions. But it's been about 5 minutes. People aren't used to me streaming, so I'm going to read more questions. This probably will be longer than the ones than people remember from Mauritian Struggle, because I used to do like hour-long ones, but this one will probably be a bit longer, maybe an hour and a half, because there's a lot to talk about with this situation, and I figure you guys would gain from it. And also a ton of questions. I think there's like 30 backed up already. So, yeah. Okay, let's continue with the next question. What happened to trad skills? I had a channel called Trad Skills where I was going to make programming tutorials, but essentially I got bored. That's the answer to that, Sam Estep. Whereas this is a lot more interesting, and I'm thinking of taking it in more of a direction of studying people, looking at their various errors and their various successes to see how we can learn from them. Because I'm finding the excellence and evil videos to be the most interesting ones to make. Even when it's watching things like, I sat and watched an hour and a half long interview with Ariana Grande, right? And a lot of people were like, you did that? You actually sat through and watched that? And yeah, I did. I did. And it was actually legitimately interesting, which will probably surprise you, because I mean, she's got videos about her getting banged so hard she can't walk, right? Music videos, But like, it's really interesting to observe, the tone in the room as they're talking, the masculinity of the women and the femininity of the men, and just getting a feel for the room. It's very hard to articulate in words, but it's nonetheless very interesting. So I get a lot of a kick out of that. I didn't get quite so much of a kick out of the one on Mia Khalifa, because she was, quite frankly, boring. Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay, let's continue. How do you pray the divine office, and what is a good resource for learning how to do so properly? Well, basically, you go onto the Divinium Officium website, if you can find that, and you read it. You're supposed to read it, but ideally you chant it. But most of us can't do that. You've got to read it though, otherwise it doesn't count as a prayer. And then you just go through the various sections dependent on the times of day. So, nonas would be the ninth hour, that'd be around 3 p.m. Sexters would be the sixth hour, which would be around 12, because the day starts at 6. So the first hour is around 6, then the ninth hour is around 3, of course, when Christ was crucified. And then you've got Vespers, which are in the evening, and then you've got Complines, which are in the night, and then Matins, which are before the first hour, from what I remember. There's a rather complex, organization of this. Hey, you should talk to Face Andy. I have no idea who that is, but I'll tell you what. I'll look him up when I'm answering questions here. Should we? The Imperium of Keck asks, should we end universal suffrage? Should we limit the franchise to property owners? Women always vote for socialism. What should we do about that? Well, the thing is that this isn't a political channel, so I'm not especially concerned with it. I also think that people vote for what they're educated to vote for. So ideally, what you do is you stop people learning socialism, or at least provide good reasons why they wouldn't immediately go for that. Like, I can't remember who said it. I think it may have been Saint Cosmas of Aetolia, but many other people have said this as well, as Saint Cosmas of Aetolia being an Eastern Orthodox saint, who said, you become a human being through education. He said that having a Greek school in every village was more important than having a fountain, because it actually makes people human beings to be educated. So going and reading those great works. Actually, next to me on the bed, because I don't have a table in this room, is the second volume of the Philokalia, which is a book about spiritual control. This was compiled by Eastern Orthodox saints, but the particular writings here are also Catholic. So, very interesting stuff. But basically, get as educated as you can, you'll become a greater human being. John, not real name, a guy who comments quite a lot, has just asked whether it is better to avoid women or change your approach, especially if you do not wish to court. You should be, I'll say this, as with all human beings, you should be encountering women as much as possible. Talk to them. Just learn from them. Every human being is a universe unto themselves. right? As the scripture says, human beings are in the likeness and image of God and are thus, in a sense, infinite. And so, therefore, it's important to get to know them because you can learn something from anything. You can learn something from the homeless man outside of your house. You can learn something from a prostitute. You can learn something from a professor. It's always worth interacting with as many people as possible, engaging whether they're worth your time or not. On top of that, you'll also notice, certain trends in behavior across sexes and across groups, and you'll want to take notes of that because those things can be useful in future. I mean, the key to anything in life really is knowing the natural order, which is of course God, loving God, and knowing how people work, which is loving your neighbor, asking them to, getting them to the point of perfection, willing good in them. And the only way you can truly, in a sense, come to know how to will good is through not only asking God for that through prayer, who's of course the source of the moral law, but also through getting to know human beings so that you can get on an intimate, experiential level an idea of how they behave. And honestly, most of us aren't that good at it because we're not innately born with that kind of skill. So we have to continually throw ourselves at it, throw ourselves at social interaction. So you shouldn't avoid women unless there's like a serious risk to your purity. If you're the kind of guy that has problems with impurity, then that would be understandable, but work that out and then engage. I'm going to quickly check the chat again. Oh, crikey, we've got 31 people. Yeah, reminder to share because it's not share. Apparently people aren't actually noticing it, the stream. Let's see. Didn't Ariana Grande have a boyfriend that apologized for shagging her? I can't say Lotus. Will he ever make a live stream with Morgoth? I'm not sure. I haven't had any contact with him. I've watched a couple of his videos, but he's more political and I'm not, so probably not. Have you answered any of your questions, Kai Makota? No, I haven't. Many young men view Joe Rogan as a great teacher. Not sure I'd agree. They treat every word that comes out of his mouth as undeniable truth. Young people need the word of God more than ever. Yes. Sandra Chinazo Noankwo, I presume that's pronounced. I'm apologizing if I'm butchering your name. How do I spread red pill knowledge to teenage men without being noticed or being obstructed? Just act on it. The best way to teach an idea is through action and not words. So you should act. That's what you should do. Live that life. People will observe what you're doing, and the people who deserve to know will start acting in the same way. There are different levels of hell in Catholicism, some worse than others. No, I don't think so. Anyway, the whole Divine Comedy aspect, the 7 levels of hell, as written by Dante, that does come out of some Christian writers. I think St. Ephrem the Syrian. You're racking my brains here. I don't actually know, but it's not official Catholic dogma, and I don't think any of the mainstream churches hold that view. Hell is just hell. Let's see. I want to show your videos to my normie friends because the messages are good, but they aren't normie friendly. Am I not communicating in a particularly normie friendly way? It would understandably be the case, but I'm trying to be as approachable as possible. All right, so it's been about 14 minutes, and I'll basically explain what happened. Let me just quickly get the actual stream up and see. Oh yeah, of course, like the video because then people will notice. People will notice that way because the more likes that a stream gets, the more it helps the algorithm. I'd really appreciate if you could like it. Yeah, basically, there's been drama in the house I was living in for about 2 months. And those people who have been around for longer than 2 months may have noticed that in the video. In essence, I lived with a guy and 3 women. And one of the girls, frankly, I mean, she denies it, but I mean, she was acting in a rather creepy way. Very, very, very forward. Continually mentioning, "Oh, you need to get married, Renaissance man. You need to get married, Ephrem." In increasingly more and more in intimate ways. And of course, I shut this down and ignored it. And eventually, I took interest in one of her friends, and it didn't go anywhere. Suffice to say, but this scorned the woman, and we've had drama for the last 5 weeks. And it got to the point where I was basically sick and tired of it. And I was like, look, if you continue, like, there was one point where she was shrieking at me for 90 minutes around, supposedly about cleaning, but obviously not. And then I said basically to her, if you do that to me again, I'll lay down the law, which would be basically, it would be me avoiding her because she only wants attention. Then if she continued to persist, which she did, I came very close to getting, more serious action. But the thing is that, yeah, she acted first. So there was also other drama as well. Like, apparently I lied about someone I don't know, barely know anyway. And one of my friends tried flirting with one of the other girls in the house and she felt uncomfortable. And then there was the other guy who had some issues that everyone knew about, but this was ignored. And then basically I've been kicked out. So I don't have a house for the moment. I'm not entirely bothered by this because, frankly, at least I'm away from this woman. She took amazing offense that I asked for advice on how to deal with her to my family, my friends, and she said, "Oh, you're lying about me. You're lying about me." It's like, yeah, fucking right. She took amazing offense to that, and I think she took more offense to the fact I was more interested in her friend. But this is done pretty much. I'm out of the house. It's a non-issue. I'm a bit richer, and I just need to find somewhere else to live. So, I mean, I could say, well, life is tits up, but it isn't. It's just I'm out of a house, and I have to find somewhere else to live and get my stuff out. Yeah, I'm homeless now, effectively. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I'll read the chat when I've gone on to the other questions, because there's actually some really interesting questions on the other thing, on the poll. If anybody wants any questions prioritized, of course, send a super chat. Have I tried Airbnb? No, I'll probably get accommodation sorted elsewhere very quickly, because of course I'm a student, so I'll just get that sorted. Although the uni is involved as well, so they're probably like, "Oh, why did you lie about this woman?" Oh, I didn't. Here's the evidence that I didn't lie. She was kind of creepy, to be honest. Yeah, this is I'm not that worried about it because this is at least the second time some girl has creeped on me. Like, there was one girl who was writing rather explicit poetry about me putting 4 kids in her more than 6 months after I blocked her on everything, and she had another boyfriend as well. Like, she obviously didn't use my name, but the inference in the career of the guy at hand suggested to me it was really, really not well hidden that it was me. But yeah. Let's start with this question, because this particular question from Heraith 1545, is racism a sin? Well, okay, so this is what I understand to be racism. Racism is treating somebody as less by virtue of their race. In that case, yes, because you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. Every human being, every human being is the likeness and is in the likeness and image of God, and that goes for everyone: disabled, male or female, black or white, Scythian or Greek, a bond or free, all the one in Jesus Christ, to paraphrase St. Paul. So essentially, that attitude is, that is bad. That is sinful. That's violating the command of Christ. However, noticing differences, provided that you don't allow that to influence your view, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Not that I really take any particular view. Let's go on to the next question. I'm still lost in my faith. This is from Gorilla Tupi, who was actually the first person to comment on the stream, I think. I have no idea which denomination of church to attend. Protestant is off the table. Good. I just don't know between Orthodoxy and Catholicism. Any way you can help? Well, I mean, of course, I'm going to confess that the Roman Catholic Church is the correct one. I take a great deal of interest in the Eastern Orthodox, though, as anybody who watches my videos can tell. I have a large collection of pictures of of St. Seraphim of Sarov. I have a couple of Gregory Palamas in my backgrounds folder that I often use for videos, and that's because I have a great deal of respect for the Eastern Orthodox. I've been very brash when talking about them in the past because I started reading into their history and found out that they were kind of like super Anglicans, and that kind of wound me up. But in retrospect, unlike Anglicanism, which is the faith that's sort of around me now, if you can even really call it that. Yeah, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. Yeah, at least it has like its own tradition in and of itself. The problem is it's a very complicated issue. Like, a lot of them will claim that Rome had no supremacy, but then there are letters from the 3rd century that suggest otherwise, and they'll say, "Oh, these are forgeries," but they aren't. Like, I looked them up. There's one by Pope Saint Fabianus and one by Pope Eusebius. Pope Eusebius being in the early 4th century, and Fabianus being in the mid 3rd, and they show evidence of direct papal supremacy and invocation of of apostolic, of the apostolic see. They act like that, and there'd be no reason for the see to act in that way unless if it was just another patriarchate, like the East likes to claim. That they wouldn't just randomly act in such a way to command the other patriarchates in the East if they didn't have some sort of precedent for this. Likewise, the filioque is a really obvious thing to accept. This is going to be rather complex Trinitarian theology, so I'll try and keep this as quick as possible because people aren't going to be especially interested. But basically, the Holy Spirit must proceed from the Father and the Son. Otherwise, the relations between Son, Holy Spirit, and Father break down. Aquinas wrote about this in his lectures on, I think it was John 13. But more on top of that, St. Athanasius of Alexandria believed in secondary procession of the Holy Spirit. He wrote in his letters to Bishop Serapion about the Spirit being in the image of the Son, which is essentially spiration and secondary procession. And the Eastern Orthodox patriarchs themselves agreed to this at the Second Council of Lyon, and also to a lesser extent at Ferrara, Florence, where admittedly they were kind of pushed into a corner. The Ottomans coming from the east to destroy them. But they agreed to it at the Second Council of Lyon. So this isn't an issue. This isn't a concern. These things are theologically worked out. Not to mention the fact that a lot of the theologians of the Eastern Orthodox Church just take positions to be anti-Catholic. For example, St. Gregory Palamas, actually, there's evidence to suggest that he believed, or at least potentially conceded the reality of the Immaculate Conception. But after the Catholic Church declared that as dogma, the idea of that completely disappeared in the East. But I mean, it's ultimately your choice. I'm only giving you the information that I know. All I'd say is stick to reputable sources. Father Josiah Trentham, Trisagion Films, Bible Illustrated, Sister Vasa is also very good, I've been told. There are some very, very good Eastern Orthodox sources that I often watch. But one I would avoid is Jay Dyer, because he's a meme. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay. Third question here. As an Orthodox Christian, why should I consider conversion to Catholicism? Or what are my options concerning RCIA classes? Considering RCIA classes are an unknown concept in continental Europe. Okay, I know for a fact that RCIA classes are not an unknown concept in continental Europe. There are a number of people from Germany that I know who are converting, and they've been looking into them. As for the reasons why you should consider conversion to Catholicism, I think I've just articulated that pretty well. In short, I do think that the Eastern liturgies are more beautiful than the Novus Ordo and even the Tridentine Mass. And you can still attend those. There are Eastern Rite churches. and I've been very strongly considering getting confirmed into one of those instead of the Latin Rite. But what you've got to consider is the legitimacy of the hierarchy, and frankly, Eastern Orthodoxy is real chaos. It's in complete chaos. A lot of patriarchates consider that they've got authority over certain churches that ignore them, like Rome, Estonia, and Latvia. There are some that, theoretically, like there's all sorts of nutcase stuff, whereas Catholicism is very, very clear on it. And God acts; these sorts of things act out in the open. This isn't to say that we can't learn anything from Eastern Orthodoxy, because obviously we can. I wouldn't have the second volume of the Philokalia next to me on this bed if I didn't somehow believe that there weren't some good fruits from Eastern Orthodoxy, and there are some very interesting saints. Saint Polyphrios of the Holy Mountain I was listening about yesterday. I've said earlier on, I listen pretty much religiously to Trisagion films because they're very, very interesting. The Archbishop of Diocletia, Callistos Ware, is a very interesting commentator as well, particularly when talking about Seraphim of Sarov, and like we've been talking about the Philokalia. Let's see. Oh, the pagan worship meme. There is no pagan worship going on in the Catholic Church. There's been some. They're like the whole thing that was going on with the Amazon Synod. That whole scene. First of all, it wasn't shaped like a penis. Second of all, someone sent me some evidence to actually suggest that some of the nature worshipy stuff that's been coming on, that actually comes from St. Francis of Assisi. I'm actually very tempted because on a Discord server that I have that's besides the main Renaissance Man one, by the way, if you're not on there, go into the description and click the link and you'll be on the stream. There's a huge collection of sources to show that this rad trad stuff is just bollocks. There's actually some evidence to show that some of the more rad trads are deliberately fifth column subverters. So just ignore them. Read the saints. If there's shit going down in the church, God's permitting it for a reason, and just hang in there. That's what I have to say to people like that. Let's check the chat. Aside from that, oh, is there a super chat? I apologize if I didn't notice. Anyway. Every man thinks. How and why did you become Catholic? Logos is rising. In short, I was convinced of God's existence through a debate. I sat and read more into it, and the thing is though, is it wasn't like this kind of formal thing where I read a book and I was like, oh, I mean that was part of it, but a lot of it was just sparks of inspiration that I had in conversations with people frankly more intelligent than me, like Mathoma. Taylor Marshall isn't great. He's a boomer. Seriously, people like, especially Michael Voris, those sorts of people, they have their position and you can watch them. Obviously I can't stop you, but I wouldn't, because they're threatening to your spiritual life. Just focus on prayer. There have been so many books written by saints. There are a number of channels teaching about spiritual practice. Like, how can you find the time to worry? If you've got time to worry, you've got time to pray. Just chill out. God will sort it out. God is in control of every single thing in existence. He sustains it. That's what God is, right? And we are disturbed by the things around us, and it's a good reason. There's a good reason to be worried, right? Particularly when it's people who we may end up married to, or people we may end up looking after. But the thing is that God will sort it out. All we have to do is hold the commandments and live in wisdom, and we'll be fine. Job, for example, he didn't. Job just viewed God as a vending machine, right? He didn't understand it was a personal relationship, and he lacked wisdom. Moses Maimonides pointed out that he lacked wisdom. Even though he's a Jewish commentator, I think that's very true, because if he had true wisdom about God, he'd realize he was a person and would stop treating him like a slot machine. So likewise, we need to act on God, be friends with him, talk to him, rather than just engrossing ourselves in this toxic online environment where people are just going on about, oh, there's paganism here, oh, whatever. Because I mean, it may well be. Let them suffer it. God will protect us. Don't worry. We can write like things against it, sure, but most people are just letting this get to them to the point where it impacts them. One of my critiques of Jay Dyer, he doesn't understand philosophy. He has outright rejected the laws of logic to me in the past, and he doesn't get the difference between a virtual and a real distinction in energies. Because a real distinction in energies would mean that the energies are ontologically distinct from the essence of God, which would mean ditheism, meaning there's two gods before time, which breaks causation. Whereas if we take a virtual distinction, which is what the Franciscans held and even Aquinas did, then he's essentially identical to the Catholic position. It's all a bunch of neurotic bollocks. That's my criticism of Jay Dyer, and we've had many discussions to the extent. Like, I'll present you with the reasons here, but frankly, he's such a neurotic and just unpleasant character that I'll just mock him if I talk to him. Yeah, I go to a guitar mass as well. Like, I go to a guitar mass because that's what's there. But I don't worry because the church has allowed it, and the church is the mystical body of Christ. It may offend our personal sensibilities, but that's just how the church has decided to go. Okay, this is a more interesting question because I'm sure the people who are here for reasons besides autistic religious squabbling. Ahadura Man Saab asks, here is a question since I'm a Muslim. Do you think that Islam and the Western world can coexist? Or, quote, do you think Muslims not being in the political right side is a bad thing? I don't think that Islam and the Western world can coexist. And it's not for the typical reasons that people give. Like, oh, it's fascist. Oh, it's, mean to homosexuals and women. And those things may well be true. But that's not the reason. The reason is that Islam and Christianity are so incredibly complex and totalizing in their views. I mean, Islam and Judaism are essentially ways to run a country, and they do, of course, bear on whether people believe them or not, but not in the same way Christianity does. But at the same time, they're still so utterly totalizing that they dominate a society. You can't have two totalizing ideas in one society or ethnos at once, because that just leads to division, it leads to war, and then one wins. I mean, as we've seen throughout history. I think that Islam is better than an absence of such a system. I mean, like what is currently going on with secularism. But I do think that Catholicism, specifically Eastern Orthodoxy, those churches, they're immeasurably superior because they're not in error. In fact, Islam, for the first a couple hundred years of its existence, was treated as a form of Christianity by the Romans, the Eastern Romans, and by the theologians who found themselves under Islamic occupation, under the Umayyads and the Abbasids, and it developed into something different. Let's see. Was there anything else? Oh yeah. Do you think Muslims not being in the political right side is a bad thing? Well, I don't especially care for left or right. I used to care about such things, but I don't now. I'll move my computer a bit closer if people can hear me a bit better. I'd rather I'm not that bothered by that. I'm more interested in the society reaching a stable point, right? Because I can, people can talk about personal relationships with Christ and the Holy Trinity, and those things are the most important things to be developed personally. But I also know for a fact that most people won't accept the call in a way that fundamentally changes their lives because they're scared by the whole thing. It's an entirely life-changing thing, and there is no going back. In fact, there's actually an Islamic parable, I think it's a Shiite one, where a young man asks one of the 12ers, like one of the 12 imams, the infallible imams, how do I build up a resistance to sexual sin? So what the imam does is he takes the young man and takes him to an abattoir, and they're cutting the meat and everything, and he's like, oh, well, this is just, you know, like an abattoir. We'll come back a bit later. And then he comes back after it's been left. And there's all of this disgusting rotten meat about. I'm probably fouling up the story, but this is how I remember it. And, you know, of course, the young man is disgusted. Like, oh, there's all these guts about, all this rotting flesh about. And the Imam says, well, the same with sins of impurity. You know, when you come back and you look at it afterwards and you look at the rotting aspects of it, you don't want to be associated with it, do you? And likewise with those sorts of sins. And I think, so where was I going with this? I don't think the majority of people would ever become, you know, absolutely obsessed with Christianity. I mean, they weren't throughout history. But I do think that we can at least retain a level of stability if we can get as many people as possible doing that, but also a majority of people following at least like a rational, natural law approach to the world. And that, I mean, I'm doing primarily getting people into the faith, and secondarily teaching the natural law, such that the people who don't want to get involved in that will instead, you know, act as the person in the abattoir and become disgusted with actions that fundamentally destabilize society. Okay, let's check the chat. Thoughts on Owen Cyclops? Never heard of him. Knight 1212. Do you still? Jokel says, do you have any major struggles with sin? Yes. Not with impurity though. So far as I know, anyway. I mean, we always struggle with sin, and you know, I mean, this takes decades to overcome. It takes decades to get to the spiritual stillness of just ceasing to sin. And even then, only really, really committed people get to that level. So we have to try as hard as we can. But I mean, I'm never going to be at that level. I'm not Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I'm like 22 as well. Like she died at 24, but I'm not to that level. I'm only just discovering it. I'm basically just through this channel telling you what more intelligent and more faithful people than me have said, and telling it in such a way that I'm hoping you guys will understand. So there's that. Yes, I am a thoroughly sinful person and a thoroughly stupid person, and I mean this in all sincerity, because any retard can read books, but there's actually a text written by St. Anthony the Great. There's some disputation. Some people say it may be Platonic or Stoic philosophers beforehand, but what it essentially says is that an intelligent man isn't a man who goes and reads books and understands what the people before him said. The intelligent man is the man who can discern between good and evil the best. That's what an intelligent man is. And I fail epically at that. So I'm not especially intelligent. Anyway, let's check out another question. Wait, that's actually just a response to somebody. The Empyreum of Keck once again. The word nation has the same root as native, natality. How can you have a nation composed of people who are not linked by a common origin, a large extended family? Well, you can't. It's the same with ethnos. You know, ethnos being, or ethne being the Greek term for nation or nations. So they have to be linked in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to be as genetic as people want it to sound, though. That can be a certain aspect of it, but it's far more, you know, the common means of life, religion, common tongue, things like that. You can't purely say language like some people say, but it's, you know, that's part of it. Okay. Dave Skeet asks, I'd like you to go over some of your favorite works of fiction, movies, books, etc. I'd also like to know more about your video making process. Finally, I'd like to hear you shoot the shit and give your perspective on a desirable society, what it would look like, and so on. Okay. Finally, I'll answer the third one first. I have no idea what my desirable society would look like, because, to be honest, I'm so imperfect I don't even know what I want. So I'd let God sort that out. As for the video making process, I use Audacity to record audio clips. I have a collection of artwork that I have in a backgrounds folder, and I have music that I've gotten over time. And basically what I do is I load up a piece of video editing software called DaVinci Resolve, and I edit it together through that. I have pre-rendered intros and outros, and then I just put them together. I overlay the clips that are used for speech around about 12 frames across each, just so they can catch the end of it, so people will spark back to attention. I'm not sure how especially effective that is, but it's been something I've been doing because Coach Red Bull taught me how to do that. That's basically the extent of it. And the first part was like favorite works of fiction, movies, books, etc. Oh, I don't really read much fiction. I'd have to say G.K. Chesterton writes some really good fiction. The Man Who Was Thursday was really good. The God Delusion is a pretty good piece of fiction. Nevertheless, like seriously, it's an awful book though. Like avoid it. The Iliad and Odyssey. They're pretty good. Aeschylus, I thought was pretty good. I read Libation Bearers and Agamemnon. I mostly read like classics. Oh, besides that, I can't tell you. But like best movie, go and watch. What was it called? The Russian movie about the Belarusian peasants fighting the Nazis. What was it called? Come and See. Come and See. That's my favorite movie of all time. I haven't read the Aeneid by Virgil, no. Okay, I've missed a bunch of comments here actually. I apologize if I've missed any super chats as well because for some reason StreamYard is a bit naff with that. It's not like making them glow as I'm expecting them to on YouTube. So I'm just going to scan over on YouTube. Okay, there's just been the one. That's good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. I just got interrupted. Okay, here we go. Hypothetically, if Christianity completely disappears in the west of Europe, what do you see replacing it? Islam. Undoubtedly, Islam is probably the second most robust religion in existence. I can't see it being any other way. And it won't be Sufi Islam. I can say that much because Sufi Islam is, to be honest, seems to be pretty degenerate from what I've seen from the outside. It just has a way of kind of melting societies. Aside from that, I can't say. I am reading the chat right now, guys, so if you're going to say something in the next few seconds, I will be reading it. Because I'm jumping between, the channel comments, because I often post on there, and, elsewhere. How can there be Orthodox saints if there are no salvation outside the church? Well, that's what they call them in their church, first of all. And second of all, there are instances where people outside of the church militant on earth become part of the church triumphant in heaven. Because the church triumphant in heaven is all of the saints, those people who are up in heaven. And those people can be from other churches. There's like Nostra Aetate writes about this, but it also goes back even further. Like the earliest instance I can think of it being present is in St. Bede's, the ecclesiastical history of the English people. And it actually, no, that's a lie. The Gospels talk about St. Dismas. He wasn't baptized, and he, turns to Christ and he goes, remember me in thy kingdom. And he actually became the first person in heaven. But the one in St. Bede was the executioner who was going to execute St. Alban. He converted on the spot and was martyred. So there you go. And also, Saint Pope John Paul II had some rather good things to say about Saint Seraphim Sarov, and called him a saint. Is it our moral responsibility to make evangelization the central part of our life? Yes. Go forth and proclaim the gospel, as it says at the end of the Mass. Now you don't have to do this in like a really up in your face moralistic kind of way, like Protestants especially have a habit of doing. No, you just live the gospel and people will find it through you, you know. Follow, like, I'd say the best way to advertise the gospel is to be a great person. Take the lessons and live them. Seems like if we take hell seriously, then warning people about it should consume many hours of our weekly schedule. No. You don't do that. You know, I can't remember who said it, but someone said once, you know, you get more flies with a spoon of honey than 10 barrels of vinegar. You know, there are four things in scripture, you know. There are threats, there are promises, there are doctrines, and there are commandments. So what you do is you tell people the promises, they follow the commandments and the doctrines, and then they remember the threats. You don't. It's like you don't walk up to something. It's like, if you don't come to my church on Sunday, I'll stab you. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying when you threaten hell. So like, there's no point because they'll just be like, okay, in the moment, and then leave at best. So just don't bother with that fucking hell shit. It doesn't work for the prots. So just don't do it. It only works on a particular kind of personality, and most people, frankly, aren't that subservient. I'm certainly not. It didn't work on me. Have you ever read Alexander Dugin, Fourth Political Theory? Alexander Dugin's a meme. Have I read Beowulf? About 10 years ago for a class in school. So I consider that a no. Not in much detail. Bishop Barrett says the church is the very privileged way to salvation. Yes. Yes, I have read The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, Temujin. Have you read City of God? I've read bits of it. There's a reason why I've made a video on Marcus Atilius Regulus, because he's mentioned in the first book. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. There's a reason why it's still being printed. Is it true Orthodoxy is growing faster than Catholicism in Ireland and the UK? I mean, even if they were, even if it was, right, they're about a 20th, if that, the size of Catholicism. Catholicism is the largest practiced religion in Britain and Northern Ireland. It's like they could gain like 3 people and a priest, and they'd be growing faster than any other religion because they're so small. How do I find out what your schedule is for the stream? There isn't a schedule for the stream. I'm just sort of reading the questions as they come up and checking the chat. Oh, blimey. Though these 3 minutes ago. Thoughts on Yukio Mishima? I read Sun and Steel, and I have to say I think Yukio Mishima was a really weird man. That's what I think of him. I think he's really weird. Towards the end, he's describing flying around in a jet plane as if he's like ejaculating or something really weird like that. He's a weird guy. Really trippy. I don't know Middle English, and I don't really have much interest in learning it either. The Prince is a meme. How fast of a swimmer am I? I'm more of an endurance swimmer. Last time I swam for like 2.5 hours, I think, just doing lengths in the pool without really stopping. I can't say I'm especially fast though. I'm a huge man. I'm 6'2" and 230, and I'm broader than most people as well. Like people have asked me if I've wanted to be a bouncer before. I'm huge. Mm. Yeah, Mishima was nuts. How do you deal with 2 thinkers who you respect recommending different things? Depends on the thinkers, right? Like, never let your personal opinion get in the way of their ideas. If their ideas map to reality, then follow them. What's your favorite writing from any saint/church father outside of the Bible? That's a very good one. Oh, I have to say the Confessions of St. Augustine. I know it's a meme, but it's a really, really good work. Aside from that, I'd have to say maybe The Life of St. Anthony by St. Athanasius of Alexandria. Those are 2, and that should do you. Mongoose Man has clearly seen the book club. Do you miss the secular lifestyle of going out on a Saturday night or not? I'm convert 23 years and I don't. I mean, I still go out quite a lot. I'm still very, very social. I'm still incredibly social. Like, I went out 4 times last week, but the thing is I just don't drink to excess. Like, everyone around me is like, smoking weed or whatever and lighting up, and I'm just there like, I've had 3 pints and I'm happy. And I use that as kind of a, like my self-control and my virtue are, hopefully influence those people in the right direction. But like don't let Catholicism destroy your social life. But at the same time, develop the self-control such that you don't fall into the vices. You cannot not interact with the world. I know we're supposed to not say people are in hell, but oh, what, Yukio? I don't know. Okay, I'll go back to reading the other questions. Give me a second. All right, because the thing is, I had the other stream open so I could find the super chat. Okay. Do you think that women should? Oh wait, that's already been answered. What are the most important virtues? How do you get more virtuose every day? I mean, he means virtuous, I know. From Vendrim. The most important virtue is humility, because by that you learn about the world and you learn all other virtues. It also means that you follow the law of God because you realize that the law of God is better than you, which is the root to all virtue. How do you get more virtuous every day? Well, through combating vice initially, and then actively building virtue after that. As I said in the video on suffering, there are 3 things that are the root of all sins. There's avarice, which is the root of all evil. There's desire, desire for good tasting food, which is, the desire for sensuality. You don't see many people who fast desiring sex. And then you've got the desire for the esteem of men. And those things, once you cut those out, you cut all vices out. And then after that, you work on the other virtues. Okay, Victorian Reactionary asks, if God is all-powerful, then why did he make the world full of suffering? If it was to test us, why? Surely an all-powerful God can come up with something better than suffering to test us. I don't think there is a greater test than suffering. Also, why does any of it matter to him if he's omnipotent? He could snap his fingers and all problems, sin, evil would vanish. I've struggled with this question a lot, and the only one I can't give an answer. It's the only one I can't give an answer to people about. God is all-powerful, and he made the world full of suffering such that we could become better. Because human beings chose. When we ate the fruit of the tree, well, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the tree being the knowledge of good and evil, because God already saw that we were very good, and therefore, fulfilled all of our capabilities in the way that he desired, which is ultimately as good as a human being can get. We learned what evil was, and we learned to diminish ourselves, evil is the diminishment of being, right? So through eating that apple, they made the decision eating that fruit, they made the decision for all human beings, like their children, grandchildren, that we are all their children, that we can diminish our being. And the only way to get that being back is, in a sense, to suffer. This much is evident in the world. You don't build your muscles without lifting. You don't build your virtue without committing virtuous acts, and you don't grow closer to God without praying. And because of our fallen nature, we feel pain in those sorts of things. Some people, detract from the life of a monk, but it is truly difficult. I struggle to pray. I used to struggle to pray like 2 hours a day, and I don't do that now. If I did it again, it'd be even harder. It's just a condition of what builds us up. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger, but you still suffer pain along the way. This whole situation here that I've just had with being kicked out of the house. It's been fucking rough. It has been fucking rough, but I've learned a lot from it. Let's see. If God is omnipotent, he can snap his fingers and all problems, sin, and evil would vanish. Yes, but if you wanted to get rid of all evil and all sin, you'd have to get rid of the root of that, which would be human beings. Because human beings chose to bring evil into the world. And It's manifest. You go out into the world and you see people committing evil all the time. And the only way to limit the evil and the sin, the deviance, in a sense, is to eliminate all human beings, which God loves and wants to bring close to him. So God could indeed snap his fingers and remove all sin and evil, but he'd also remove all human beings because we're the people doing it. But God loves us. God loves us. That's why he sustains us. That's why we still exist. And so thus he gives us a choice. Him, which is all goodness and all greatness and all omnipotence and all knowledge, or those habits that we have developed as a result of the fall. I'm sure you've all heard them, like lust, pride, avarice, and there's also nothing greater than maintaining the free will of a human being, because all other beings do not have free will. It's part of us being in the likeness and image of God. If he were to remove our free will, then that would make us not in the likeness and image of God, and therefore it would be a deviance from human nature, and therefore it would make us not very good. You see what I'm saying? I hope this is a decent answer. This is basically me just sort of, a stream of consciousness thing. Clark Daniel asks, what are your thoughts on postmodern positions which claim science has killed God? I'll tell you what my position is on them. I laugh at them because they're stupid and they're wrong. And we can tell from the quality of the philosophy that's come out over the last 100 years that they are retarded. Okay. Let's see what's in the chat. Do we Catholics believe in theosis? Yes, that's what sanctification is. Go to the bar and proselytize with your boys. It's Saturday. Thoughts on Charles Coulomb? I don't know much about him beyond he's a Catholic writer and a boomer. I'm sorry if this... Renaissance Man, I'm sorry if this is cringe. Sometimes I doubt God loves me. How can I overcome this? Pray more. Talk to God. He's right there. He sustains all living beings. You could, an interesting practice? Go and look at an inanimate object or any object in the world and comprehend how it is like unto God. Comprehend how God sustains it. And by doing this, by meditating on these created things, you'll transcend those created things to the uncreated God. Just pray more and do that. It's entirely understandable. We all feel that way sometimes. Sometimes I find myself thinking God is utterly inarticulate, right? But, I know that what I'm thinking is wrong, so I just ignore it and continue with life. Okay, let's continue with the questions in the chat. Could you respond to a Dark Matter 2525 video? No. Why would I waste my time with a retard? That's not even a question. Leo Key. George Sire. Was feminism a giant shit test that the Western men merely failed? No. No, it was a conscious decision by the most intelligent men in society that they decided that they wanted more pussy. That's what feminism was, and the women were dumb enough to fucking buy it. And the thing is that these men, so carnal as they were so stupid that by acquiring more pussy, they undermined the entirety of society. That's my opinion on it. It's probably a lot more than I'm saying, but that's what it certainly seems like from the outside. Because what better way to get emotional creatures who are, who are like IQ of 100 versus the men who are in control, who are like IQ 130 and up, to give you, the pleasure, right? Get them away from their husbands, get them in the workplace where they're exploitable. And so they did that. And look where we are. You've got the top 20% of men in power who choose to, taking advantage of that. And you have many below that as well. And I'm not just talking materially here. If you're smart enough and you can learn game, you can get tons. You can get tons of pussy. Women are pretty easy when it comes down to it. Even if you don't know game, if you're virtuous enough, in the sense that, like, if you're manly enough, if you've built, material things, such that your life is easy. If you're ripped, just go get it. It's easy, because that's what's happened right now, and that's what I think was the plan. I'll tell you what. I'll give you guys some time to build up some thoughts. I'm going to quickly run and grab some water because my mouth is getting quite dry. Right, I'm back. Let's have a look at the other questions. Oh, the chat is active. Let's see. Do I wear Crocs? No, I'm not on the spectrum. One of my friends believes that good is only defined from God, because God is a big man who simply enforces his will. How do I help him understand real goodness? Well, I mean, goodness comes from God, but it's not because of divine command. It's because of God's nature. God's nature is to be good, because God defines being, and greater states of being are greater states of goodness, and bad is getting rid of that, destroying that. So I don't know how you'd market it in any other way beyond what I'm saying. It just makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense than God being able to arbitrarily defy himself, which is what divine command theory would need. It would need God to go and contradict himself. Yeah, I thought it was divine command. Yeah. God is logos, reason. Morality is practical reason. God doesn't go against reason or morality because of that. It's not so much that. It's more that he defines being, so therefore he defines what is good. Are you familiar with Christian authoritarian movements like Codrianu? I suppose that's was it Alejandro or Antonio? Antonio Primo de Rivera, Leon de Grell. Yeah, I do know about them. My thoughts on them vary. Trying to think about the best way of putting this. I'm not especially keen on Primo de Rivera because it was more secular. Codrianu struck me as nuts. I mean, de Grell fought for the SS, but there are some like Salazar that weren't so bad. I'm ripped. Morty. Sorry about that, John Murphy. I'm ripped, 6'2", make good money, and can't figure out how to get some. I am nobody, can constantly traveling. I'll tell you what you do. You go to the bar and you start talking to people. Because I'm 6'2", I'm not ripped, I don't make good money, and I have to turn it down because I just, I'm at uni. Just do that. Go and talk to people. Let's see. A Protestant asked me, how is it possible for Catholics to speak to Mary? She cannot be omniscient, so how can she hear you? Because God lets her, because she's in heaven with God. It's really that simple. Codrianu is a bit of a nutcase. Yeah, no fornication is allowed as well, but just go meet people. I mean, the greatest experience you can get with a woman isn't fucking her. Goodness gracious, it's learning out how they work. DC asks, I am Oriental Orthodox, so your thoughts on this branch, since they're somewhat similar to Catholicism and we can attend each other's services at school. For example, I went to a Catholic high school. So that'd be Armenian and Coptic. I disagree with monophysitism, or miaphysitism, as you guys call it, because you apparently differ. I can't really make much of a comment beyond the fact that I disagree with that. I'm a Chalcedonian. It was Swish Scroll Alpha asks, the only solution is to put Muslims against feminism because all right wing dudes are incels. Is that a question? The only solution is put Muslims against feminism because all right wing dudes are incels. Just don't be an incel then. Choose not to be an incel. And you choose not to be an incel by getting more virtuous and getting rid of that fear. Because honestly, inceldom is a result of learned helplessness. So just stop being helpless. And you stop being helpless by doing things in the world, hard things in the world, because you learn when you do hard things that you can achieve other things. You know, and women like getting poo, easy. You just have to sit around, talk to us. I mean, for goodness sake, I was out the other night with a friend of mine, and this like a friend of mine was just sitting there talking to this admittedly kind of skanky girl, right? And like chatting to her, and she was like, you know, chatting shit back at him, and it's like, oh my god, you're so basic. Like that's what he said to her, and it's like, you know, sweetheart, you have a rose tattoo. And like he's like negging her and that. You just took the piss out of her for like 10 minutes, and she's like offering for him to sleep in her bed. No, 10 minutes. Me, my record is 20, but it's not hard. Just go talk to them and just look them in the eye and don't be scared of them. They're human beings, for goodness sake. If anything, this whole solution, this whole situation with me getting kicked out of the house has fucking stopped me putting pussy on so much of a pedestal. It's just they're human beings like you, and they have the same problems. Often worse. They're not like these angelic creatures. Goodness sake. Justinian the First asks. Okay, so essentially a long list of citations on anti-Semitism and Christianity. How do you view the long history of anti-Jewish sentiment within Christianity, especially Catholicism? As always, love your videos. Would be ecstatic to see you do another live stream. I don't really have an opinion on anti-Jewish sentiment. I think there's a lot we can learn from the Jews because they've survived this long in spite of being attacked by almost everyone. I don't think they lack wisdom. I think that sometimes they can be a bit crass and a bit sarcastic in their humor, and I think that humor is quite funny. But don't discount them. I wouldn't discount them, but over that, I'd ignore me and I'd go and listen to what the church fathers have to say on this, because they know better than I do. I still think it helps to have an understanding of their traditions and such. Yeah, I've heard of Reason and Theology. They're worth watching. There's schism in the 5th century, by the way, Isidore. 400s. I'm not trying to sabotage the conversation, open this can of worms, but I've found this channel via the way of MGTOW, Red Pill. Yeah, that I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, my video, one of my first videos was on Coach Red Pill's channel. Also, I'm more than happy to interact with those sorts of people. I'm always open to interacting with other channels, especially considering, I've been told that I'm being somewhat throttled in terms of views. Apparently, people aren't seeing my videos come up and stuff like that. So it would help to get the word out there if I'm interacting with people. It doesn't matter who they are. They can be, it could be blooming leftists. I don't especially care. Okay. XR asks, how do I improve a virtue or eliminate a vice? I think I did a video on this. Go watch them. That's my channel. Because there's so many virtues and so many vices. Colin asks, thoughts on Camille Paglia? I do not like her. She's advocated, she's defended paedophiles in the past. I just discount her. There are so many better books to read. Just ignore her existence. That's what I'd say. I don't especially like her. Kaimakota asks, what should I go as for Halloween? There's a lot of questions about going as things for Halloween. What's really scary? What is really scary? I don't know. I don't know. Just go with something scary. Catholic Spaniard. What are you studying? What are your plans for life? I'm doing an undergraduate in computer science at the moment, and I'm looking into going into research. Hopefully, skipping the masters out for a PhD, and I'm thinking of transitioning to classical studies, specifically the study of Middle Eastern languages. At the moment, that failing, I'll go into financial mathematics. I'm somebody who's interested in a lot of different things. The real issue is choosing the things to be interested in such that I can commit to them, right? Because I'm equally interested in learning how stochastic analysis influences financial markets as I am in translating the untranslated poems of St. Ephrem the Syrian. I'm a person of many interests. And I just chose computer science because that's the one that's the most marketable. I could have done something in history. I could have done classics. I could have done mathematics. I could have done... there's all sorts of things. Part of me considered German. I've got my GCSE in German, but I haven't studied it in a few years, but languages interest me as well. Right. Kai McCotter asks, thoughts on Arminians, Pentecostals, and other Southern Protestants? Kai, the Arminians... I only know them as Smells and Bells Calvinists because all I've read on them is their relation to, Jacob Arminius, the Senate of Dordrecht, and the English Civil War, which was the very beginning of the Arminianist movements, so the early 17th century. Pentecostals have no real theology as far as I can tell, so I don't have much of an opinion on them. And Southern Protestants, like other Protestants, I don't think it's especially logically coherent because of, I assume, because they're presuppositionalists. Kublai Kavkaz asks, how's my overhead press progressing? I've got a confession to make. I haven't been to the gym in 3 months because this house stuff is a clusterfuck. And I've been starting university courses and things like that. And it's been a real mess. Life's been just a mess. I've gotten to the gym about half a dozen times, and every single time the squat rack has been packed and there are people waiting. And it's like, for goodness sake, I'm not wasting my time waiting for for the squat rack, especially considering I'm like bigger than most of the people in the house, like in the gym, right? Very few people exceed 2 plates when it comes to things like even deadlifts. I deadlift 3 plates, or I was at least 3 months ago. I could squat 2 plates easily. Okay, maybe not easily. Wait, 180 goes. Yeah, pretty easily. I could do 3 plates. No, not easily. I could just about do 2 plates on back squat, and just over 1 plate on OHP. Yeah, I'm normally exceeding those sorts of people. So, I can't be bothered. I'm going to get back into it though. Now I'm out of the house, away from these women. Okay, let's check the chat. We'll go on as long as there are questions in the chat. Okay, so as long as people have questions, but we will continue. There's a reason why they got booted from... Oh, okay. Kind of an odd question. Mythical creatures, are they real? St. Jerome talks about the centaur. Probably demons. The same way as aliens, It's all demons. What are your thoughts on Bronze Age pervert, frog Twitter, and adjacent parties, Delicious Tacos? I haven't read Delicious Tacos books, but I have read Bronze Age Mindset. I listened through it 4 times. And... on one hand, I like the masculine message. On the other hand, it's a pretty shit book, to be honest. I think there's better literature out there, but I don't read much of the kind of homo-fash stuff. Now, anyway, I basically, the extent of my knowledge on that kind of thing is Bronze Age mindset. Can you explain what's the deal with Eucharistic adoration and what one does during adoration? Eucharistic adoration is where you sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament and you do whatever you want. When I used to go, now I can't go because of the women. Well, I can go, but the women will get awkward and, I'll be asked to fucking leave, crazy shit. Would I be asked to leave? Probably not. like I'm being a bit ADHD here because I've had a bit of a stressful week. Basically I can't go to adoration really, unless I want to cause like a social scene. Basically, what I used to do was read and pray. So I do a rosary, I do like the Rule of St. Pachomius, and read a bit of scripture, or what was the other book I was reading? The second book of the Ascent of Mount Carmel by St. John of the Cross. Will you work for DeepMind or Jane Street? I don't know. I'd rather work for myself. Most of my modules are in artificial intelligence and in networks. Like not just neural networks, I mean regular networks. So I'll probably, ideally I'd become a professor of classics, but 60% of my modules are AI, so I'll probably go into AI for a bit. It's fun. The guy's right about women. Once you go out and know you could get sex, then you can move on and do more important things. If you're a virgin and don't know you could not have been, then go out. Well, it's not so much about being a virgin, it's about realizing that you can just talk to women, you know? There are plenty of guys who never guess were virgins who get on perfectly fine with women. It's about learning about what they are, because women are really interesting because they're human beings and they're infinite. So just go learn about them. They're all so fun a lot of the time, even the ones that you think are kind of stupid. Like there are some that I will just dismiss offhand because I think they're disgusting. You know, those really attractive girls that reckon there's something rotten because daddy's rich or something. Those I ignore. Likewise, like the really skanky women I ignore. But besides that, I try and have fun. Just go and have fun. You only get this life once. You're only young once, for goodness sake. And it doesn't take you getting in some guts to realize that. What are some sins common to women? Lust, anger and sloth, those are some. Lying. But you shouldn't be concerned about that. You should be concerned about yourself. Because, what are you going to do? Just go read the scriptures. Go read Sirach. Go read Proverbs and follow their advice. It's inerrant. When I pray the rosary, I tend to focus more on the words of the Hail Marys and forget about the mysteries. Is that a bad thing? As you pray the rosary more, you'll be able to focus on the mysteries better. Just focus on getting the prayers right for now, but always bear the mystery in mind. Actually, Jokel, you're right. Yeah, I was sitting through my cognitive neural networks lecture the week before last because I just started lectures, and I kept noticing all these modernistic errors, body-mind distinction and stuff like that, in what the lecturer was saying, and it was actually kind of triggering my autism. It was like, you're continually going on about how all thought goes on through these, neural networks, and really, the essence of human thought is the immaterial mind, as Aristotle defines it. And if we realize that as, AI researchers, then we could do more advanced things with cognitive neural networks, I think, purely through taking advantage of the human mind. Because you don't have to simulate it on the computer. You just have to get the neural networks producing such things that human beings can notice. There'll never ever be a computer with a personality. I think there's a number of people actually realize this, right? Like you'll never have a computer with a human personality because it's impossible. Because human beings are immaterial and machines are entirely material. But we can take advantage of human immateriality in the production of neural networks, such that we can do more impressive things with computers to the human mind, while still retaining those sorts of things. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all of the questions. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.